I just want to say welcome everyone here to this pitch prepping session. Johnny Lahane, he is currently the managing partner at Hudson Valley Startup Fund. And he's a serial entrepreneur, investor, consultant, also an educator in this space. So welcome, Johnny. And we're all of the students here so far are competing in the Iona Innovation Challenge. So they're eager to learn, eager to practice how they can be better pitch, how they can create a better pitch and develop their ideas. Some of them are in the beginning of the ideation process, some of them are a little bit more fleshed out. So welcome and thank you for being here today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me. I'm really excited with the small group size. And I think where I want to go from here. So first, the context I mentioned previously was the Mid-Hudson Business Plan Competition, which I hope you all participate in because the work you're doing with the Heinz Institute competition is the same work. Also a reminder to mute yourself if you're not speaking, just for everybody else. So I heard from Austin, how many teams are represented here? Charles, are you your own business or are you working with anybody else in the class?
Yeah, I'm doing my own thing.
What's your thing?
So I had an idea for kind of like I've worked a lot in hospitality. I've managed a restaurant before. So I had an idea for kind of like a dessert restaurant, like an actual like restaurant centered around dessert. I just kind of feel like there's only more like cafes where you get like dessert to go, not like an actual establishment where people can, hang out for a while.
Awesome. Great to be able to, that's great overview of it. So thanks on that. Jack, and I see somebody else there with Jack.
Yeah, so me and Austin had this idea of people being able to essentially rent out their driveways as parking spaces.
So
what kind of neighborhoods or regions or areas?
So we did a lot of research pertaining to this because we know right now there's it's a very competitive market, especially with different companies and startups that have decided to make it so that parking is what their business plan is based off of. So we wanted to make it so that this is located in areas where parking isn't really as accessible. So we figured, neighborhoods that are close to airports or, potentially alternatives to parking for days in an airport parking lot that would cost a substantial amount. In addition, there's the like Queens and Brooklyn having a lot of different garages over there as opposed to Manhattan. That would be more cost effective for us because we would invest less money into that in order to have individuals be able to make their own privatized income as opposed to going through a monopolized industry. So we figured that would be a great thing. And on top of that, the last thing I wanted to add is that we also have plans for major cities, but we just know that starting off feasibly, it wouldn't make sense because big cities would cost a lot of money and we would need a patent or a permit to have permission to use different parking garages associated with different apartments or complexes owned by real estate agencies or by, individual investors.
Got it. Thanks. Awesome overview. And is it Rihanna?
Yes. I'm actually working with someone as well, but our idea is basically a app and a device to help nonverbal children be able to communicate with their families when they're not with their therapist or like teachers.
Wow, awesome, fantastic! I can't wait to hear more about that. That's very cool. And if Pataki hasn't mentioned Dana Jones yet, you should meet Dana Jones. Maddie List.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay, so I'm working in a group. No one else is on the call right now, I don't think, but so we're in the occupational therapy department and we came up with like So there's a thing called a grabber or a reacher in our world for like rehab. So it's it's like a different version of that is more universal. So it has different tools that you can attach to it. So it does more than just reaching. And then it also can shrink down to be travel size, because a regular reacher is really bulky, and anyone who needs like a reacher and a walker now has to try and carry both. So if you could shrink it down in size so that it's more portable.
Awesome.
Where our ideas.
Cool. Very neat. So fun. I can't wait for diagrams. And Khadijah Jackson. Did I say that right?
Hi, yes, you said it right. I'm actually working with Maddie on this one.
Great. Awesome. So let me go back to gallery view. Did I miss anyone? Awesome overview. What I'm going to do is share hopefully a very little bit about myself and put up a list of 20 things that we like to see in a pitch deck. And I want to get an understanding of how many of these you're like, oh yeah, I know, I've seen that list or something like it, or this is all new to me. And I have information on each of those 20 things. I don't know we're going to talk about all 20 of them. But I think this can give us an opportunity to dig into certain aspects of pitching and what I think makes a great pitch deck for yourself and for presentation.
Sure, that would be great. And maybe Johnny, I can share with you what the students are expected to include in their pitch decks and their executive summaries, so that maybe it'll help you also figure out which of the 20 to like highlight a little bit more.
That would be great if you have it to paste into the chat room or otherwise.
I got it right here. I got you.
Awesome. And I'm going to share my screen. Excuse some of this is Brandon, Danny, and I work together at Excel 7, the accelerator for the Hudson Valley Center for Innovation. And we developed this with that in mind. So that's why the branding is. Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
All right, great. I'm not going to dig too deeply into this here, but when you have judges or financiers, they want you to understand why the money that you're going after is the right kind of money for your business if you need additional funds. Bootstrap or sweat equity means you're not going to anybody for money, that you're either getting pre-orders to bring money in to fund whatever you have to do, or you're spending out of pocket personal funds that you can keep track of and hopefully get that money back, or whatever you're doing, you're just figuring it out as you go. You're not going to anybody else for capital. Bank loans, or most people think of as traditional thing with a bank loan, is that you need to put up collateral, which is usually either a house or equipment that could be sold, or a building if it's involved in the business. So a lot of businesses in this universe that we're in aren't going to be bankable, so to speak. Rental, doesn't count. So if you're renting your first space, that's actually a liability, not an asset, like a piece of real estate. So anyway, that's one level of the capital stack. Friends and family, if you do think that you're going to need to spend more than you earn for some amount of time, whether that's 3 months or 3 years, but you think you can figure out a way to pay those folks back, you may approach friends and family for either debt, loans, or to own a piece of the business. Grants, they give you money, some strings attached, but no expectation of equity or repayment. They're great for the right businesses. And then investment is what we focus at the Hudson Valley Startup Fund, and where many of these competitions eyeball as the likely funders of events is angel and seed funding. When we say typically is debt, it's unsecured, unlike the bank. So we don't expect anyone to put up a house or anything for it. So that's some practical knowledge, and likely would only come up in a Q&A with investors. But I'm going to put it out there. Any questions on that? All right. I am going to jump right to that list and unless you already, did you share it in the chat here? Sorry, I need to put on readers.
Yes, I put it in the chat. So there's the
Great.
title slide, the problem opportunity, the value
Yeah.
proposition, what the product or service is, the business model, go-to-market plan, competitive analysis, their team, financial projections, any key metrics or milestones, and then use of funds.
Great, great. So very much in line with my list here, which lays some of them out in a little more detail to be the most basic, like of course, title slides, etc. And then the executive summary is also required. Most compelling statement, problem statements. And then what is your pitch format? How many minutes you're doing it recorded video?
So for the final event, their pitch will be around 4 or 5 minutes. So it's a lot shorter than traditional startup events. I mean, considering that this is, college, a smaller scale college competition. And also since we're doing it virtually, we don't want everyone to
no, this is
hours.
absolutely zero judgment at all. So 4 or 5 minutes is tight. You got to get a lot in there, right? So even these 10 slides or so are going to be a challenge. Mm-hmm. And the key to them is actually really understanding what you're trying to say on the slide, and really how you've built your business into what you understand there, so that the slide's just a reference point for you and highlights, just the main point in words and the main point in pictures. But you really have to understand fundamentally, to the best extent that you can, for instance, your business model or your unit economics. So as I think about, and I'm going to click through here, sorry, because some of these, I'd like to dig into the meat of it right there.
There's a Q&A, by the way, afterwards, so that they will have an opportunity for a couple.
And is that another 4 minutes?
I believe it's another around like 3, 4 minutes. Yeah.
Got it. So by a show of hands, and I'm going to have to scroll back and forth a little bit because I don't get gallery view, who has started some form of their pitch deck, like started filling in some of the slides?
We haven't filled in our slides, but we do have our executive summary mostly done, and we do have our pitch pretty much written out. We just haven't created slides for them.
Got it. And Khadijah or Maddie?
We don't have anything set up. We wanted to go to the workshops first just to see like what to write and what to expect, and then start making it from there. Great.
And is Aisha, are you a new group or with one of the other groups? Ashani, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm with Khadijah and Maddie.
Okay, awesome. And Charles?
I've started just working on the executive summary here and there. I just when I get time, I work full time, and with other classes, I've set some time aside though to start working on everything.
Great. No, so that gives me a good sense of where folks are. I think taking the 10 slides as titles and whether those are different paragraphs to break up your long form notes, like your presentation into, I tend to start with the bullet points and not the long form narrative. But that's my style. Some people start with the spreadsheet and are like, how do I make this business work? And let me do the numbers to see like how much is it going to cost me to make a widget, and how much money can I make on a widget, and if this is going to work. Other people work on the business plan or long form narrative, which I think is like the executive summary is the short form, and that narrates out. For the pitch presentation, I think it's really helpful to hone in on like the 3 to 5 most important slides of the list outlined, that you're going to develop like as full literacy as you can on them across the great slide, the narrative, and the financials. Like, how do these really tie to the fundamentals of the business? Because the way you're going to win in these 3 to 8 minutes is to prove that you've got a market, that's your a market and a problem, and a solution that can make money, right? So we're really going to have to narrow it down to that. Within all of that, the biggest challenge is that you only have 4 minutes. So we like to develop a story or your founder why, but you're not going to have a ton of time. But what we want to hear is that you have personally experienced the problem or have personally seen the gap in the market with the dessert restaurant. You know, I've served dessert in restaurants. I've served at cafe only places. There's a middle ground here and here's how come I understand it, and my experience makes me the right founder for the business. So it might be your work in occupational therapy, your experience in the problem there comes through in your founder story and why you're jumping on this. Then, as I said, and you guys all have there, you're going to want to dedicate a little bit of time to the problem. And one of the most important things that's on this slide, and I can share this deck later, these are just my talking points, is to the first verbal pitch bullet point. Don't fall in love with your solution over the problem. We have a grabber with attachments that's probably going to be super valuable. We really need to pretend we haven't developed the solution yet and say, is this really a problem that needs solving, and how come the current products in the market miss? We have to make it clear that that's a problem and not a solution looking for a problem. You will find yourself talking about your solution on your problem slide. And that might mean that your problem isn't strong enough yet. So I'm going to call on Austin and Jack. And we do have a solution in a marketplace of, I think, privately owned residential parking lots and people who need to park bigger things. Is that, you're on mute.
Sorry, I'm still getting used to, not just pressing the space bar.
All good.
That's
what do you see as the problem that's being solved for you guys?
So the problem that's being solved is allowing people who want to make money, who want to make some money on the side while they're out either at work or on vacation or on a business trip. I think even having our business in certain affluent areas, obviously with less availability in those places, would also be beneficial because by doing this, it opens up people to make income on the side as opposed to and in addition, the person renting out the spot, we also implemented a sort of program where they gain points. It's kind of like similar to how if you take Uber or Lyft, you start gaining different perks after a while, or you make it to a different level. So it also gives them an incentive. There's also a referral program where they can refer different people, and that allows for more customers and consumers to kind of use our application. But yeah, so the major problem that we did have at first was the fact that there are so many parking garages and there are, places for people to leave their cars. But the only thing is that major metropolitan areas or places that are extremely populated are extremely difficult to find parking in. And I know from experience, my parents both work at Mount Sinai in the city, and them finding parking is ridiculous. So and that's just one part of the city. So I feel as though the cost of parking, such as let's say Icon, they charge roughly around $22 an hour depending on the location and what time of day you're there. So that being extremely expensive, that's something that a lot of people try to avoid, which is why they spend a lot of time and it's inconvenient for them. And they end up searching for hours on the street, worst case scenario, trying to find a parking spot. And sometimes they don't. So I feel like this would be a very good solution to the problem of people not being able to access spots as easily, and it would make it very convenient for them. We also wanted to implement
I'm gonna ask you to pause there. So you are explaining, I think, the marketplace. The imbalance that you see in this marketplace is where people have private parking that they're not using, and places where there's high parking need. What I need to hear, so that to me is a problem, that there's an imbalance in parking in some specific location between owners who don't need it and folks who need it.
Yeah.
The second we start talking about how we're going to solve it, the implementation, we are into the solution, and we want to get them clearly separated, so that we know who we're competing against on the solution versus how we're servicing the people with the problem, because it's basically different perspectives from there. To recap, it's when you start talking about implementation, that's solution, right? And we really want to focus on defining for you guys, like I said, the problem to me is that pain point of an imbalance in the marketplace. For others, it might be a missing component in the marketplace, where people want to spend a larger share of their budget than they're capable of doing now. It might be a more specific thing like the dessert market. Sorry that I cut out. Was there a follow-up? Did somebody else want to dig into their problem a little bit, or do we want to continue on towards solution and market?
I just wanted to ask a question. So when you're saying that you want us to focus more on I guess the problem at hand, not the problem at hand, but more so like, the competition, that's what you're referring to, right? Different competitors.
Good question. When I talk about the problem, what problem is the potential customer experiencing is one way to think about it. The challenge facing your consumer. On the solution side, we're going to be compared to our competitors. So once we get to the solution, our solution should solve it in a way that our competitors don't. But for the problem, we want to be thinking like the customer. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Thank you for asking for the clarification. So the solution is where you get to describe the product. So this is the things that we've implemented, how it may be adaptable or different from the competition. We want to make sure that it clearly solves the problem, and maybe doesn't solve only part of the problem, or doesn't try to solve a wider problem than the problem that we've identified. So there should be a clear match there. So we may say that the problem is threefold: idle parking spots, crowded in parking, and expensive. And our solution may be threefold that lines up with each of those three, so that we can draw that straight line. It's as simple as that and as complex as that. So again, it is important to separate, and I'm sorry if I'm being fundamental on this, the product from the solution though. And in this case, we can then get into, and then I want to pause for more questions or examples. The next few slides that go along with the solution are the value proposition, which is what is the benefit to the customer. Benefit different than features. The benefit is how it makes my life easier or less painful or gives me joy. And the feature is the thing that gives me the joy or the thing that makes my life easier. So the grabber has new attachments that can pick up Jell-O. The joy is freedom. The benefit is a new sense of freedom. So in our value proposition, we want to be talking about the benefits. And again, we should be looking at how do we do this differently than our competition. I'm actually gonna skip digging too deeply into underlying magic. It's important and it's hard. This is your competitive advantage or how you think about the problem differently. In a business plan competition, they're gonna ask you for how you are unique. But it's one of the most challenging things to develop in a short time period because you haven't lived with the problem long enough, to be honest. You really develop your underlying magic the more that you understand the problem that the consumer or the customer is facing and how your competition is missing in their approach to the market. Your underlying magic is your difference in understanding the problem and then protecting that understanding through intellectual property or developing a moat or other competitive advantage like a network effect. And then lastly, with solution, and then we'll back up, is the business model. So now you have a solution. How does that business model make money? So what are your unit economics there? And I'm going to pause there and try to get back to seeing your faces for those of you that have your cameras on. That's a set that goes together to me. The solution, which has the components of a value proposition, and a business model. And as I said, and in between that, a little bit of the underlying magic. Are there any questions about any of those components or how they're different from each other, how value proposition is different from business model or unit economics, or how the solution is different than either of the other two?
This is a little off topic. I mean, everything else is fine. Like I understand everything, but I just wanted to ask if whether you won the competition or not, does the Iona, I guess, Heinz Institute help if you wanted to kind of get your company off the ground if it does turn out to be something that seems to be a potentially successful idea?
I don't know that that's a question that I can answer. I think we can definitely have Danny come back with more information on that. I know that the Heinz Institute is a great mentorship institute for its students that are looking to succeed, and that there are a lot of programs that it's associated with. I don't know about the inner workings of the programs of the Heinz Institute itself.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry, I was writing out a quick email to someone on my team.
Yeah, sure. So my question was basically just asking whether or not you win, if the Heinz Institute is able to assist in taking your company off the ground, if it turns out to be something that you and your peers and other people you're even competing with consider it to be a good idea and there's potential for success in it, if like there would be any kind of guidance or, you know, help with kind of taking it off the ground. But
So what's great is that we just launched in the fall a virtual incubator program. At least it was virtual when it launched. I'm not sure that it will be in person for the fall. But we did launch the Gale Ventures incubator program for our students. So if after the competition that's something you would be interested in, or if you see that's something you want to apply to, that is an opportunity as well. That could then help you a lot more intensely accelerate the business in that sense.
okay, and what is that called again?
Gale Ventures, GA, I'll type it in right here. Gale Ventures. So there was a, if you go onto the Iona website, you can read the press release that was launched about it when it kicked off, and you can get a little bit more details there. And yeah, so after the competition, you know, we can connect and have that conversation.
Okay, thank you for the info.
Of course. And then also take advantage of all the mentors too, the ones that we connect you with, as well as the ones on Startup Tree. So everyone there on Startup Tree is, you know, between being a professional, you know, highly regarded professional in their field, or an entrepreneur, or, you know, they could be in intellectual property, they could be in real estate, whatever it is. And these are people that you can pick their brain to continue helping you along as you continue to build on your idea. And who knows, like you may end up having a mentor that lasts beyond the competition and becomes an actual mentor, you know, in your business or in your life that can also help you continue to push it forward.
Charles and Maddie and team, any other questions or thoughts that come up around the solution, the value proposition, and the business model? Do you feel like you have a clear understanding on what you would jot down for a couple sentences for each one of those as a starting point?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I guess like, can I explain it a little bit more?
Yeah.
So like I got the idea, like I want to open up a place that, you know, is giving more than just kind of like dessert. Like it's gonna be like an experience. I got the idea, like, you know, you go to like a kind of like a hibachi style restaurant like Benihana's. You don't just go for dinner. It's like an experience. You get to interact with the chef. You know, he cooks for you, interacts with the family. Everyone has a good time. So I want to do something like that, but that's just kind of like centered around dessert because like as I mentioned, I've worked in a lot of different restaurants. I've managed a high-end steakhouse, and you know, for most part, like a lot of places, especially corporations, they're trying to get guests out in and out. It's all about like flipping the table. So like I'd want to be the place that you'd like come to like afterwards. Target margin would be like anyone celebrating a special occasion, which is, you know, pretty much anyone. You know, birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, whatever. But my whole thing is like having just like a whole assortment and variety or like array of like extravagant desserts, like having like large tables where people can gather around, like have a good time. Obviously there'd be like, you know, bar drinks for the adults, but with that being said, like the inventory costs for dessert and alcohol are relatively low, and I would obviously charge more than I would normally charge because I'm not just giving dessert, I'm giving people an experience. With my profits, my plan would be to like kind of give back to my employees, because like one thing that's overlooked in restaurants and hospitality industry is the well-being of the employees. The higher ups just constantly overlook it, and I feel like a lot of the guests overlook it too. And so I would pay them what they should be paid.
Awesome. Thank you for the deeper explanation. I think of this as sort of, for lack of a better word, a dessert bar combo that gives you the opportunity to slow down after the meal, right? But not necessarily a booze focus, right? So instead of feeling rushed out, so the problem is that dessert doesn't get its due, right?
Right. It doesn't get as like, even if you go to a place like Benihana's, like the whole point is the experience of dinner, but then like dessert is just like, here's
An
ice cream,
afterthought.
here's your check, like get out of here, let the next people come in so I can make some money.
Right. So on the one hand, you're rushed out. On the other hand, it doesn't get its focus in coffee. It's a side dish. Or it's for kids and family. It's the ice cream stand.
Yeah. And it's like, there are so many places now I know that they're trying to like do extravagant, crazy desserts, but it's like, I've never seen like an establishment, like an actual restaurant that was just centered like kind of around that. So
it's
I would
just
say
desserts.
Yeah, I would do something just like that, but like, you know, ice cream, cakes, like kind of think like, you know, Benihana's meets like Cold Stone, the way they like kind of make it up in front of you with like unlimited toppings, assortments, but like, you know, kind of like more than that, you know, like I said, like ice cream, cakes, like
But sit down,
like
right?
milkshakes. Yeah, like sit down,
So,
like in a
yeah,
place to come and
so-
celebrate. Like I want to call the place Treat Yourself, because you're coming basically to like, you know, have a good time, celebrate, you know, birthday, graduation, anniversary, any sort of special occasion, or if you're just, you know, you feel like you got kicked out of the last place and you want to come to another place to just keep the, you know, experience and the party going.
Yep. So great. In that review and what we've talked about so far, to me, the problem is it's dessert's problem. And the way that in the jobs to be done category, the solutions that we have for dessert are rushed at the end of fine dining, kid focused, outdoor dairy experience, or this cafe, and it's not the focus. So dessert's not getting, that's the problem, right? So that person who wants to focus on a slow dessert doesn't have a place to do so. A fine dining, slow dessert experience, maybe. So that's the problem. The solution is treat yourself, right? And where the focus is on that. And we need to get an understanding of the aesthetic. So that's the solution. Your underlying magic is probably your perspective and the way that you're thinking about dessert. Business unit economics for you is cost of your product in, your cost of goods, and your product out is how much you can sell your stuff for, plus your labor and overhead. Pretty straightforward for you. To me, your underlying magic, which is probably where I cut out, is that you think about dessert differently than everybody else, that you make it the focus. That you could, I don't know that the judges will buy into this, but if I were in your shoes, I would say I could tell my competition that they're doing it wrong because they don't focus on dessert as an experience, and they would still screw it up. Because I understand people who want, to have that dessert experience. Your value proposition is probably actually the bigger challenge for you a little bit, right? Why do I have to make an extra stop? What are the benefits to me here versus having it at the cafe or having it at the end of dinner? So we have to focus on the benefits, not the features. But that's one that I would love to see your bullet points sharing with Danny or me and hammer into them. I think that's going to be a bigger challenge set for you.
I got you. Thank you.
Maddie and team, any thoughts on solution and value proposition and unit economics?
I think our biggest thing is going to just be making sure that our audience understands like why we're different, because technically like there is a reacher. So explaining what is different about us, and actually a lot of people don't know what that even is until like we showed it to people. So I think just being really clear on our solution and as to why we're different is going to be our hard process. And then I guess just financially, because it either has to be the same as a reacher, like, or somehow like less than a reacher to be more appealing to buy ours versus like something else.
Great thoughts on where you need to be. I think visuals are definitely going to help, right? And
yeah.
And showing the failure, like what's the failure experience with a current day reacher? Where's it not getting it done? And then how ours can get it done, I think is important for us to really understand that value proposition. And then on the unit economics or business model side of things, depending on how it's better and if it's just more convenient or actually has orthopedic or somehow is better for me ways, are there other buyers besides individuals? Can we sell this up the purchase chain to PT units, to recommendations from hospitals, doctors, et cetera?
Yeah, it can definitely be sold to anyone. But when we did our first like Meet the Mentor thing, they told us that we had like too many ideas and to like kind of rein ourselves in a little bit and get the main ideas out and then expand. So we kind of just kept it within our field because that's like what we know, but it can definitely be expanded out in the future.
So the way that I might cover that, and we're not going to cover today, sort of the marketing channels and the sales channels, but you're going to start with your segment and industry that you understand, both in who you market to as well as how you market it. But then you can show on your roadmap and your revenue that some percentage, maybe up to half in 3 or 4 years, is going to be from other segments, whether those are other specified sales channels. What are the other verticals next to yours that you know you could sell into? If you lump them all together, you maintain your focus, but you show there's a bigger opportunity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. I am cognizant of time, but I hope hearing the other teams explain their ideas and then where I believe you can refine what you're saying a little more clearly and where you need to think about the idea. Hopefully that's helpful. I am looking at, we have 5 more minutes. And I want to go back and look at the list of slides that we've covered. I think we're up to go-to-market and timeline competitive analysis. Have you guys seen samples of any of those? Charles, have you seen what a sample competitive slide? Okay. I'm going to share my screen again. I just called on you, Charles, because I can see your face and know you're paying attention. Let me present this here. I'm going to jump forward a few. So a go-to-market timeline slide, and I need to get a picture of you guys in case my audio goes out again. This is showing where we are today. So have we done some, we've probably in this business done some research over the last X weeks or months. And what we need to show that we are in the process of doing or going to do is engaging with potential customers. So what you need to do to gain the most credibility in your business plan competition and to learn the most about your business is to go talk to people whose problems you hope to solve. So get out there and be able to say, I did some customer interviews. I talked to 10 people that I know eat restaurant, fine dining, dessert experiences and interviewed them about what they like and don't like about that experience. We talk to folks who use our grabbers, et cetera, et cetera. People who have parking spots and people who need to park. We clearly spoke to them. And the reason I'm digging into this is, A, it will put you a big step ahead in a business plan competition. And B, it's a milestone that you can check off as saying customer discovery, launched customer discovery on March 26th. And then tomorrow, I'm going to test my solution in the marketplace. And that could be in 3 months or 6 months. And then I'm going to have my first paying customer at some point in time. This is our our go-to-market timeline and milestones. It can be pretty short-lived, which to me would be 6 to 12 months. Or it can say, this is what I'm going to do next. And here's where I see myself going. If I'm going to scale it to a huge nationwide software app business, in 5 years, I'm going to have millions of recurring revenue. But the investors want to see where you have been, where you are today, and how you think about growing this business in the future. And I think of it in terms of milestones. How are we going to learn about the product? How are we going to test the product? How are we going to engage with the marketplace? And possibly what resources you'll need or how big you'll be at that point. There are 2 typical types, but you can do this differently. One type is actually the bottom one on this screen, and it's an XY axis, where you pick, how do you look at the industry? Maybe I look at all of my competition in the restaurant industry as casual and fine dining, and fast or slow, and I'm just making these up. And then I show where TGI Fridays doesn't care how long you sit there, but it's not fine dining. So they missed the mark a little bit and how they think about dessert. And bread alone doesn't make it, isn't fine enough dining. If those are my 2, I would place their logos on this grid, and my company is always going to be top right. I think about it the best along these 2 axes. That can be a challenging way to think about a market or industry. A more straightforward way may be to take the benefits that we talked about in our value proposition and list them in a grid. And that's this table up top, where it might be interchangeable parts on my grabber. We might have a yes and nobody else in the industry does. Travel or compact, we might have it and nobody else does. Under $100, everybody might have it. But we're going to put usually competitors across the top and benefits along the side here. We want to show as the one with all the benefits. So those are 2 standard types of competitive analysis. And I'm going to stop right there and just ask all the teams if there's any questions about how you might lay out or think about the competition. And again, this needs to tie in neatly to your value proposition and your underlying market magic. Show that you think differently and provide a different product than your competition. This slide is going to try to encapsulate it in sort of one picture. All right. I don't hear any questions on that. Unfortunately, we are tight on time. I know Danny has this deck and I can reshare it as well. But I also can be available to answer any follow-up questions.
Yeah, and if anyone has any other questions too regarding like the actual competition too, I'm here as a resource. I'm also on Slack for everyone here. If you're not on Slack, make sure to get on there. You have direct access to me and the team.
Is that the Iona Slack?
Yeah, we have a Slack with the students in the competition.
Got it. If Danny wants me on there, I'll join that too.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Really appreciate you diving deep into some of these topics.
Yeah, absolutely. This could go on forever. Finishing this project and getting to the pitch, you will know more about what it really takes to start and run a business than 95% of the people your age.
Okay, so one last question before we end the session. I created a Slack and I kind of just gave my group members my login. Should we all create our own Heinz Institute Slack, or can we just use one?
Yeah, use your own. That way, if you have a question, from you, you can ask from you. I mean, it'll be great. Like, let's say like any one of us, or you want to message someone directly and they know who they're talking to. And I could also direct something straight to you, or someone on the team can, or if one of the students wanted to reach out to you, they could. And they know who they're talking to. So I would say, yeah, go ahead and make your own individual Slack accounts.
All right.
I have to jump.
Thank you.
If there are going to be actual pitch preps, again, Danny can coordinate with me to slot that. But I hope this was a good overview and starting point.
Johnny, do you mind sending us your email so we can actually get the PowerPoint that you went over today?
Yeah, I'm putting it here, but Danny will also send it out. But my email's right in the chat there. Johnny@hcstartupfund.com.
Thanks, Johnny.
Thank you all. Have a good one.